What happens when a royal figure known for silence steps into the spotlight with words that shake the very foundation of tradition? Prince James, long regarded as the reserved and introspective member of the royal family, has done what few expected. He's spoken out, and the world is still reeling from the impact. His bold revelations have sparked debates, divided public opinion, and raised questions about the monarchy's ability to evolve in a rapidly changing world. Why did Prince James choose this moment to break his silence? What exactly did he say that has everyone talking? And how will his actions shape the future of one of the world's most enduring institutions? Let's dive into the story that has captivated millions. Imagine the anticipation of a world captivated by royalty, where a figure shrouded in mystery finally steps forward to share truths no one expected. Prince James, known for his quiet demeanor and reluctance to embrace the public spotlight, has taken an unprecedented step that has left everyone talking. To understand the weight of this moment, we must first delve into the man behind the crown, or rather, the man who has spent much of his life avoiding it. Born into a family steeped in centuries of tradition, Prince James has always been something of an enigma. Unlike his more outspoken relatives, he chose to remain in the background, observing rather than participating in the public spectacle that often defines royal life. Yet, this quiet approach only added to his allure, making his recent decision to speak all the more shocking. Growing up in the shadow of royal expectations, James was known for his introspective nature. While other family members thrived in the limelight, attending galas and embarking on official tours, he was more often found immersing himself in books, history, and art. Friends have described him as thoughtful, intelligent, and deeply private, traits that set him apart from the more traditional image of a royal figure. This contrast made him a favorite of those who prefer substance over spectacle, though it also fueled endless speculation about what lay beneath his reserved exterior. Despite his preference for a quieter existence, James could never fully escape the public eye. After all, his lineage is one of the most recognized in the world. From an early age, he was taught the nuances of royal duty, balancing the weight of tradition with the demands of a modern world that constantly questions the relevance of the monarchy. While his siblings and cousins embraced these responsibilities with varying degrees of enthusiasm, James often seemed content to let others take the lead, remaining in the shadows as a dutiful, if understated, member of the royal family. But as the years passed, the world changed, and so did the expectations placed upon the monarchy. Social media turned even the most private moments into public discourse, and James found himself pulled into a narrative not of his own making. Rumors swirled about his views on the institution he was born into. Was he a reluctant royal or simply one who valued discretion? Each unanswered question only deepened the intrigue, building a sense of anticipation for the day he might finally speak for himself. That day has arrived, and the impact has been nothing short of seismic. In a carefully orchestrated moment that felt both deliberate and spontaneous, James chose to break his silence. The venue was intimate yet symbolic, a setting that reflected his desire for authenticity while nodding to the weight of his words. Those who were present described the atmosphere as electric, a collective holding of breath as the prince began to speak. What struck everyone first was his tone. It was not the formal, rehearsed cadence often associated with royal addresses. Instead, his voice carried an emotional depth that immediately drew listeners in. He spoke of his life, his struggles with identity, and his views on the role of the monarchy in a world that increasingly demands transparency and relevance. It was a speech that felt as much a confession as it did a declaration. For many, his words were a revelation. James painted a picture of a life caught between duty and individuality, a balancing act that has often left him feeling adrift. He expressed gratitude for the opportunities his position afforded him, but did not shy away from acknowledging the constraints it imposed. It was a perspective that humanized him, breaking down the walls of privilege that so often separate the royal family from those they represent. Yet, for all the empathy he inspired, his speech was not without its bold moments. James openly questioned certain traditions, challenging the idea that they are beyond scrutiny simply because they have endured for centuries. He spoke of a desire for a monarchy that evolves with the times, one that can connect with people not just through ceremony, but through genuine understanding and shared purpose. These were not the words of a man content to stay in the background. They were the words of someone ready to step forward, to claim his voice and his place in the ongoing story of the royal family. As his speech concluded, the room erupted into applause, though the emotions it stirred were far more complex than mere admiration. Some saw his words as a breath of fresh air, a necessary step toward modernizing the monarchy. Others viewed them as a break from tradition that risked destabilizing an institution that thrives on its continuity. Regardless of where one stood, it was clear that James had changed the narrative, shifting from a figure of quiet curiosity to a central player in the royal saga. But what led him to this moment? Why now, after years of silence? The answers, like James himself, are layered and complex. Some point to recent events within the royal family, moments of tension and change that may have compelled him to speak out. Others suggest it was a personal journey, one of self-discovery and a growing awareness of his unique position to influence meaningful change. Whatever the reason, his decision to break his silence has sparked a ripple effect that is only just beginning to unfold. As the world digests his words, the questions remain. What will this mean for the future of the monarchy? And how will James navigate the new role he has carved out for himself? For now, all we can do is wait and watch as the silent prince steps into the spotlight, reshaping the royal narrative in ways no one could have anticipated. The ripple effects of Prince James's revelations began almost immediately, extending far beyond the walls of the intimate venue where he chose to break his silence. As his words spread, first through the audience in attendance and then across media outlets, they ignited a storm of reactions. Social media buzzed with commentary. Hashtags related to the prince's name began trending worldwide, and headlines dissected every sentence of his speech. Some praised his bravery and foresight, while others questioned the timing and the motives behind his decision. What struck most observers was the boldness of his statements, particularly his critique of certain royal traditions. James didn't mince words when he described elements of royal life as archaic and out of touch with modern values. For many, his willingness to address these issues head-on was refreshing, a sign that the monarchy could evolve in ways that better resonate with the public. But for others, it felt like an attack on an institution that is deeply intertwined with national identity and cultural heritage. As these reactions poured in, analysts and commentators scrambled to interpret the significance of his remarks. Was this the beginning of a larger shift within the royal family, or simply a personal expression of frustration? James had always been seen as an unconventional figure within the monarchy, but this was the first time he had openly acknowledged the inner conflict he faced. By doing so, he offered a rare glimpse into the challenges of balancing personal beliefs with public expectations. At the heart of the controversy was a question that has long surrounded the monarchy. How can an institution rooted in centuries-old traditions stay relevant in a rapidly changing world? For James, this wasn't just a theoretical debate, it was a deeply personal struggle. He spoke candidly about the pressure to conform to roles and expectations that often felt at odds with his own identity. In one particularly poignant moment, he described feeling like a symbol rather than a person, a role he admitted he had grown weary of playing. This sentiment resonated with many people, particularly younger generations, who have increasingly questioned the relevance of monarchy in contemporary society. Social media platforms like Twitter and TikTok were flooded with discussions about James's speech, with users debating whether his words marked the start of a new era for the royal family. Some even hailed him as a trailblazer, someone willing to challenge norms in ways that could pave the way for future generations. However, not all responses were positive. Traditionalists and royal loyalists viewed James's comments as a breach of protocol and a potential threat to the stability of the monarchy. Critics argued that airing grievances publicly could undermine the unity and authority that the royal family seeks to project. In the days following his speech, several high-profile figures in the media and political spheres weighed in, with some defending his right to speak his truth and others urging him to remain silent for the sake of the institution. Amidst this whirlwind of public opinion, the royal family itself faced mounting pressure to respond. Historically, the monarchy has adhered to the principle of never complain, never explain, a strategy designed to preserve its mystique and avoid being drawn into public controversies. But James's speech presented a unique challenge. His words were not just a personal revelation. They raised broader questions about the monarchy's future, questions that could not easily be ignored. Behind closed doors, discussions among senior royals were undoubtedly intense. Reports began to surface of emergency meetings and hastily arranged calls aimed at formulating a unified response. While some insiders hinted at support for James's call for modernization, others reportedly expressed concern about the potential fallout. It was a delicate balancing act, showing solidarity as a family while maintaining the institution's integrity. Despite the royal family's characteristic discretion, there were subtle signs of their position. A statement released by a palace spokesperson carefully avoided direct mention of James, but emphasized the monarchy's commitment to serving the public and upholding its traditions. This measured response did little to quell speculation about tensions within the family, with many interpreting it as a veiled rebuke of James's comments. Meanwhile, James himself seemed unfazed by the controversy. In the days following his speech, he was spotted attending a series of public events, each appearance drawing significant media attention. Observers noted his calm demeanor and unwavering focus, a stark contrast to the frenzy surrounding his remarks. For those who supported him, this only reinforced the belief that he was a man of conviction, unafraid to stand by his principles. Yet, amidst the chaos, one question loomed large. Why had James chosen this moment to speak out? Some speculated that recent events within the royal family had played a role. There had been whispers of disagreements over succession plans, debates about the family's role in politics, and even tensions around how to engage with the public in the digital age. While James did not address these issues directly, his comments about the need for change seemed to echo broader concerns that had been simmering beneath the surface. Others suggested that his decision was driven by personal growth. After years of observing and reflecting, James appeared ready to define his own path. By breaking his silence, he was not just sharing his thoughts, he was staking a claim to a role within the family that felt authentic to him. It was a bold move, one that carried risks, but also the potential for lasting impact. As the dust began to settle, it became clear that James's speech had struck a chord far beyond the royal family. Public opinion polls revealed a divide, with some calling for greater transparency and reform within the monarchy, while others rallied in defense of tradition. The media frenzy showed no signs of abating, with each new development sparking fresh debates about the implications of James's words. What remained undeniable was the shift in how James was perceived. Once seen as a quiet, reserved figure content to stay in the background, he had emerged as a powerful voice within the monarchy, unafraid to challenge the status quo. His speech had not only sparked conversations about the institution's future, but also marked the beginning of a new chapter in his own story, a chapter defined not by silence, but by courage and a determination to be heard. The aftermath of Prince James's revelations rippled through every layer of society, leaving no corner untouched. The media frenzy showed no sign of slowing down as analysts, commentators, and everyday citizens dissected every word of his speech. Yet, the reactions were as divided as they were passionate. While some hailed him as a visionary leader unafraid to confront outdated traditions, others questioned the prudence of such public candor, fearing it might erode the monarchy's mystique and unity. For James, however, the focus wasn't on the controversy, but on the conversations his words had sparked. In the days following his statement, his actions suggested a deliberate strategy. He made a series of appearances that seemed carefully chosen to complement the themes of his speech. Whether visiting youth organizations advocating for change or attending discussions on the monarchy's relevance in a modern world, he demonstrated a clear commitment to the ideas he had voiced. These actions added weight to his message, signaling that this wasn't a fleeting moment, but the beginning of a sustained effort to influence the future of the monarchy. Observers noted how composed James appeared despite the intense scrutiny. His public demeanor, calm and resolute, served as a sharp contrast to the flurry of reactions swirling around him. Some speculated that this newfound confidence was a result of years spent observing and quietly understanding the intricate dynamics of the royal family and its relationship with the public. By choosing this moment to speak, James appeared to have timed his actions with precision, ensuring maximum impact. As the public debate raged on, a curious shift began to take place. People who had once dismissed the monarchy as irrelevant found themselves intrigued by James's vision for its future. He had touched on themes that resonated with a younger generation: transparency, adaptability, and a willingness to engage directly with the public. Social media platforms became a battleground of opinions, with hashtags like Thowers Modern Monarchy and James Speaks trending for days. Memes, debates, and even heartfelt posts filled timelines, illustrating the emotional and intellectual connection his words had sparked. Yet, within the royal family, the atmosphere was far less celebratory. While the institution had faced public scrutiny before, James's comments felt different. They came not from an external critic, but from one of their own, adding a layer of complexity that was hard to ignore. Some insiders reportedly viewed his speech as a betrayal of the family's unspoken code, loyalty above all else. Others, however, saw it as an opportunity to address long-standing issues that could no longer be swept under the rug. Behind palace walls, these differing perspectives played out in private discussions. Senior royals, accustomed to carefully managing the family's public image, grappled with the implications of James's remarks. Would addressing his concerns publicly legitimize them, or would ignoring them risk alienating a public increasingly drawn to his vision of a modern monarchy? It was a delicate balancing act, with no easy answers. Adding to the complexity was the role of the media. Tabloids latched onto the drama, amplifying every whisper of tension within the family. Headlines speculated about rifts and alliances, portraying James as either a heroic reformer or a divisive figure threatening the monarchy's stability. The truth, as always, was likely far more nuanced, but the public rarely had patience for nuance in the face of such captivating drama. Amidst this turmoil, one of James's most striking qualities became evident: his refusal to engage in mudslinging or personal attacks. While many expected him to respond to criticism or defend himself against accusations of disloyalty, he chose instead to focus on the issues at hand. This measured approach earned him respect from even some of his harshest critics, who acknowledged his ability to rise above the noise and keep the conversation focused on meaningful change. His supporters pointed to this as evidence of his potential to bridge divides both within the royal family and in its relationship with the public. They argued that his speech, while controversial, reflected a sincerity and depth of thought that was rare among public figures. By addressing issues that many had long felt but few dared to articulate, James had opened the door to a new kind of dialogue about the monarchy, one that felt more honest and inclusive. As these debates continued, James's next moves became a topic of intense speculation. Would he take on a more active role within the monarchy, using his platform to advocate for reform? Or would he step back, allowing his words to speak for themselves while avoiding further controversy? His actions so far suggested a careful balance between the two, as he navigated the fine line between personal conviction and institutional loyalty. What was clear, however, was that James had struck a chord. Public opinion polls reflected a growing divide, with younger generations largely supporting his vision while older, more traditional demographics expressed concern. The monarchy, long viewed as an institution resistant to change, now faced a moment of reckoning, one that would test its ability to adapt without losing the essence of what it represented. For James, this was uncharted territory. His decision to speak out had thrust him into a role he had long avoided, one of public leadership and accountability. Yet those who knew him best suggested that this was not a role he had taken on lightly. His speech, they argued, was the result of years of thought and reflection, a culmination of experiences that had shaped his understanding of what it meant to be both a royal and an individual. As the dust began to settle, one thing became increasingly clear: James had changed the conversation. By breaking his silence, he had not only redefined how he was perceived, but had also forced the monarchy to confront questions that had long been left unanswered. Whether this would lead to meaningful change or further entrenchment remained to be seen. But for now, all eyes were on the silent prince who had finally decided to speak. As the days turned into weeks, The impact of Prince James's speech continued to resonate across public and private spheres. The royal family, once seen as unshakable in its traditions, now found itself at the center of a national and global conversation about its relevance in the modern world. James had managed to do what few before him could: shift the focus from ceremonial pomp to the core question of what the monarchy truly stood for. For many, his words were a rallying cry. Younger generations, in particular, found themselves inspired by his vision of a more transparent, adaptive, and socially engaged monarchy. University campuses hosted debates on the role of royalty in contemporary governance, while think tanks published papers examining James's proposals for change. His critique of outdated traditions was not seen as an attack, but as an opportunity, a chance to reimagine the monarchy as a force for good in a rapidly changing world. However, this newfound momentum wasn't without its challenges. Traditionalists pushed back, arguing that James's ideas risked diluting the essence of the monarchy. For them, the institution's strength lay in its ability to endure through centuries of change precisely because of its steadfast adherence to tradition. They warned that tampering with its foundations could unravel the very fabric of what made the monarchy unique. Amid this ideological tug-of-war, James continued to navigate his path with characteristic poise. His public appearances became more frequent, each carefully chosen to underscore his commitment to the themes he had championed. Whether meeting with community leaders advocating for greater inclusivity or visiting organizations working to address climate change, James demonstrated a clear alignment between his words and actions. This consistency earned him praise from supporters who saw him as a genuine agent of change. One particularly striking moment came during a televised roundtable discussion on the future of the monarchy. James, joined by academics, activists, and cultural leaders, participated in a candid dialogue about the challenges and opportunities facing the institution. His ability to articulate a nuanced perspective, balancing respect for tradition with a call for evolution, impressed even his skeptics. It was a performance that cemented his place as a thought leader within the royal family, someone capable of bridging divides and fostering meaningful conversations. Yet behind the scenes, the pressures were immense. Friends and confidants revealed that James felt the weight of his actions deeply. While he had anticipated a strong reaction to his speech, the sheer scale of the response had exceeded his expectations. The constant scrutiny, coupled with the knowledge that his words had caused friction within his family, took an emotional toll. Still, those close to him described a man unwavering in his resolve, driven by a belief that the changes he advocated for were not just necessary, but inevitable. Within the royal family, the debate over how to address James's remarks continued to simmer. While some members privately expressed support for his vision, others remained staunchly opposed, wary of setting a precedent that might embolden further departures from tradition. These internal tensions spilled over into public speculation, with tabloids publishing stories about supposed alliances and rivalries within the palace. The narrative of a family at odds only added to the intrigue, drawing more attention to James's cause. Despite the challenges, James seemed to understand the long game he was playing. He knew that meaningful change within an institution as entrenched as the monarchy would not come quickly or easily. Yet he also recognized the power of starting a conversation. By breaking his silence, he had planted seeds of thought that, even if not immediately embraced, would continue to grow and influence the way people viewed the royal family. For the public, James's journey became a source of fascination. Documentaries chronicled his rise from a reserved figure in the background to a leading voice within the monarchy. Social media platforms buzzed with updates about his latest appearances, while opinion pieces debated the significance of his actions. Whether people agreed with him or not, there was no denying that James had become a central figure in discussions about the monarchy's future. As his profile grew, so did the expectations placed upon him. Supporters hoped he would continue to push for reform, while critics waited for any misstep that could undermine his credibility. James, however, seemed unfazed by these pressures. He remained focused on his mission, emphasizing that his goal was not to tear down the monarchy but to help it evolve in ways that ensured its relevance and longevity. This vision resonated deeply with those who had grown disillusioned with the institution. For them, James represented a bridge between tradition and modernity, someone capable of honoring the monarchy's history while addressing its shortcomings. His willingness to engage openly and honestly stood in stark contrast to the image of a family that had long been accused of operating behind closed doors. As public opinion continued to shift, the royal family faced a critical juncture. Would they embrace James's call for change, or would they double down on their traditional approach? The answer, it seemed, would depend not just on James's actions, but on the broader cultural and political climate. For now, the monarchy remained in a state of flux, its future shaped by the interplay of forces both within and beyond its control. For James, the journey was far from over. He had ignited a conversation that was as complex as it was necessary, challenging assumptions and inviting people to think critically about the role of the monarchy in their lives. While the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. Prince James had stepped into a role he had long avoided, not as a passive observer, but as an active participant in shaping the future of the institution he was born into. And in doing so, he had ensured that his voice, once silent, would continue to be heard. As the conversation around Prince James's revelations continued to evolve, it became evident that his actions had set a precedent. He was no longer just a member of the royal family. He had become a symbol of change, representing a shift in how royals could engage with the public and navigate the complexities of tradition versus modernity. His speech, once seen as a bold and isolated act, had ignited a broader movement that extended beyond the monarchy itself. Supporters rallied behind him, not just for what he said, but for what he represented. In James, they saw the possibility of a more relatable and transparent monarchy, one that didn't shy away from addressing its flaws. His willingness to acknowledge the limitations of royal traditions resonated with a society increasingly focused on accountability and progress. Discussions that had once been confined to private whispers now unfolded openly in public forums, with people debating what a modern monarchy could and should look like. James's growing influence also began to attract attention from outside traditional royal circles. Activists, academics, and even political leaders reached out, eager to collaborate with him on initiatives that aligned with his vision for change. These partnerships further solidified his role as a thought leader, someone who wasn't just critiquing the status quo but actively working toward solutions. From environmental sustainability projects to campaigns promoting mental health awareness, James used his platform to amplify causes that mattered to him. This new phase of his life brought with it both opportunities and challenges. While his actions earned him widespread admiration, they also heightened the scrutiny he faced. Critics continued to question his motivations, accusing him of seeking personal attention or undermining the monarchy for his own gain. Tabloids speculated endlessly about tensions within the royal family, with every gesture or omission interpreted as a sign of discord. For James, this relentless focus was a double-edged sword, a reminder of the power of his words, but also of the expectations that came with them. Despite these pressures, James remained steadfast. Those close to him described a man deeply committed to his principles, someone who understood that meaningful change often came at a personal cost. He was strategic in his approach, carefully balancing his public appearances with moments of privacy that allowed him to reflect and recharge. These periods of retreat were essential, providing him with the clarity needed to navigate the complex landscape he now found himself in. The royal family, too, began to adapt in subtle ways. While they stopped short of publicly endorsing James's ideas, there were noticeable shifts in how they approached certain issues. Official engagements became more focused on themes of inclusivity and social responsibility, mirroring the values James had championed. It was as if his words had nudged the institution toward a slow but significant evolution, one that acknowledged the need for change without abandoning its core identity. Public sentiment toward James also began to stabilize. While initial reactions to his speech had been polarizing, a growing number of people came to appreciate the courage it took for him to speak out. Polls showed an increase in support for his vision of a modern monarchy, particularly among younger demographics. For many, James had become a symbol of hope, a reminder that even the most established institutions could adapt to meet the demands of a changing world. Yet James's journey was far from over. The path he had chosen was not an easy one, and there were still many questions left unanswered. What would his role within the royal family look like in the years to come? Would he continue to push for reform, or would he step back to allow others to take up the mantle? And perhaps most importantly, how would the monarchy itself respond to the challenges and opportunities his words had brought to light? As these questions lingered, one thing was clear. James had irrevocably changed the narrative. His speech had sparked a conversation that would not easily be silenced, a conversation about identity, relevance, and the power of individuals to shape the course of history. For James, the journey was as much about personal growth as it was about public impact. By finding his voice, he had not only redefined his place within the royal family, but had also inspired countless others to believe in the possibility of change. The legacy of his actions was still unfolding, but it was already evident that they would leave a lasting mark. Whether through his advocacy, his vision for a modern monarchy, or the personal example he set, James had ensured that his voice would continue to resonate long after the immediate buzz around his speech had faded. His journey was a reminder that silence, when finally broken, can have a power far greater than anyone might have imagined. And for the monarchy, his actions posed a challenge and an opportunity to evolve, to listen, and to find new ways of connecting with the world it seeks to represent. With that, we have reached the end of today's video. If you have come this far with us, be sure to check out other videos on the channel.